So this week I've been doing a lot of writing. Those of you who watch the vlog regularly will know that I've got quite a few projects that I'm working on at the moment. But also, last weekend my friend Heather came to visit and we actually worked on some of her music as well. So there's been quite a lot of writing over the last week. And that's what I want this week's vlog to be about. I want it to be about writing and the perception of what a writer does, and certainly how I work in this capacity. I know I've kind of covered this in bits before with vlogs and obviously with A Song in 7 Days, but one of the things that I want to talk about is my relationship with writing and how that has changed over the years. Because when I started writing music, my perception of what you had to do was very, very different to what I actually do now. And I mean this in quite a few ways actually, because I think when I was younger, I expected my life now to be about being up at 3 o'clock in the morning with candles burning and a glass of whiskey trying to come up with an idea before a deadline. And even though I definitely have had nights like that in the past, and there was a phase of my life, particularly at university, where I would do that a lot, but over the last few years as I've started to do it more and more, I've learned that it is basically like any other job. You have to sit down for a period of time and you have to do things. And obviously there are some obstacles to overcome. But anyway, let's talk about writing. So if you've watched any videos about my creative process before, you know that I use a mixture of modern and quite antiquated techniques. So I make iPhone notes when I have an idea for a song, but I also use a tape machine to record my progress. But both of those are equally important to my writing process because, sure, I might not be up until the early hours of the morning trying to force an idea, you know, in a very romantic sense, but I do have ideas at weird times. There is no two ways about that. But also, the thing about that is that obviously I don't always get to implement them there and then. Sometimes I might actually be out doing another job. So it's actually good to allocate some time the following day or as soon after you've had that idea as possible, just to sit down and try and flesh it out. Now, that's where the tape machine comes in handy, because the amount of times that I've come in here, then hit the record button and sort of started playing and come up with something and then gone, right, that's great, it's out of my head, I'll come back to it later. I have literally lost count of the amount of times that I've done that, and I have to order new tapes all the time. And you know what, I'm genuinely surprised that Max will still make these. I have to get them from Amazon, and I usually buy them like in increments of 15 just because it's worth doing. But obviously that idea staying on that tape is no good to me. So I will allocate time during the day to actually go back over these ideas. And sometimes, as I've shown in my songwriting process before, I can actually go through these tapes to try and find ideas to put into new things when I'm a little bit dry as well. And in a strange way, there is something quite romantic about using a tape machine. I will acknowledge that. And the fact that I'm able to sit at a piano with a tape machine and a notebook is very good. It's a bit of a writing stereotype, isn't it? But at the same time, it doesn't always flow. I know I've probably projected that in the vlogs, that sometimes I'll sit down and have an idea and I'll just be like, great, this is how I'm going to do it. But sometimes I will actually just say, right, from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, I will sit down with the tape machine and the piano and a notebook, and I will come up with something. Now obviously that can be quite a frustrating process, but I work through that hour, and when it gets to 11 o'clock, I will stop. I'll walk away and I'll do something else. I genuinely thought for a while when I started doing this that when I had that idea, I'd have to drop absolutely everything and run to the piano. But it just doesn't work like that. You've got to make that time to develop those ideas aside from it, because otherwise you are going to be up until the early hours of the morning. You are going to be pulling over to the side of the road with a notebook to make some notes on some lyrics. And the sad thing is that the world still turns around you when that happens. So if you do stay up until that time in the morning, you are going to be tired the next day. So for example, the other day I had an idea just before I fell to sleep, and I made a note of it in my iPhone, and then I went to sleep because I knew that the next day I was going to sit down and develop it during an actual scheduled time. And it didn't affect the outcome of the idea, I didn't lose the idea, and I certainly find that's a more healthy way to work. Strangely enough, one of the things that I've found over the years that I've been writing is that the times when I've been busiest doing other things is when I've wanted to write more. Quite a few people have spoken about this. Casey Neistat talks about it, and that time of his life when he was working in that seafood restaurant and he was cleaning the bottom of the pans and he was thinking about all the films he wanted to make. And there really is something to be said for that. It doesn't even have to be a job that you don't enjoy. I think it's certainly an advantage of being a freelancer that I get to do lots of different jobs all the time, because I'm not always thinking about writing when I'm doing something else, but I certainly find that when I get to the end of a particularly busy day, that it's what I want to do. It's the thing I'm naturally drawn towards doing. And there have been periods of my life when I've had all the time in the world to write, and I actually haven't. There was a time when I was about 20 years old, when I had a temporary job that was full-time for about 8 weeks, and I wrote an album at the same time, and I can comfortably say that those 8 weeks were the most productive 8 weeks of my entire life. Even though I was working extremely long hours, I was using every other waking hour to put this album together. And there was just something pushing me to do it. And during those times you tell yourself, oh, if I only had a bit of free time, I could do more of this. But during those times when I've had more free time, I've certainly found that I actually haven't. Now to me with writing, I certainly love doing it. And that's what motivates me to do it. It's not necessarily about not enjoying the other things that you do, because I do enjoy the other things that I do. But writing will always be the thing that pushes me forward. It's the thing that makes me want to create. So to continue our theme of writing this week, Dad and I are going to a calligraphy workshop at Dreambakes. You excited, Dad?
I am really excited. What I'm really excited to see is the quality of your handwriting improve, because at the moment, as we go in, it's absolutely appalling. So I'm hoping...
Yeah, he's not joking, my handwriting is terrible. Considering how much writing I do, there really is, like my handwriting is very, very bad. So hopefully this session will improve that. Fingers crossed. Well, that was really fun, and it was actually surprisingly relaxing to do. I feel like the act of actually concentrating was really good. It was good to do something that wasn't music related for a while as well. Obviously being at Dreambakes as well, I had a cake and a cup of tea, which was just amazing. In fact, all round, probably the best 2 hours of the week so far. Really enjoyable. I think I very quickly learned that it's going to be a presentation thing. If I ever get it up to the speed where I'm able to write notes and lyrics in that way, then that would be fantastic. But to be totally honest with you, I can see me writing things out neatly afterwards, perhaps like cards, letters and things like that. But I think I'd have to be pretty good in order to just write like that all the time. In fact, genuinely, people of the 18th century who were doing that, well done. I'm genuinely astounded that anyone can do that quickly. And strangely enough, it does kind of tie in with what I was saying about the romanticisation of writing, because when I picture Shakespeare writing, I picture him writing like that, very smoothly and very ornately. So obviously when I'm writing down notes and things like that in block capitals and only I can read it, it's not necessarily a hugely romantic image. But today I got one step closer to that and I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of those things that's going to take a bit more time, and I'm going to work on it. And by which I mean expect my Instagram to be completely full of it. So I'm back in the studio now and I'm ready to do some writing. Some musical writing, that is. Although, anytime that I can use this calligraphy, I will. I promise you that. My plan this afternoon is to actually shake things up a little bit. So, I am still going to work in little chunks of time. I am still going to have little breaks and things like that and push through when I'm struggling. But the difference is, in the musical that I'm working on, I've got about 4 or 5 more songs that I need to finish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little bit of time on each of them. So it's my natural inclination to just take one of those songs and completely finish it. But with this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work for 40 minutes on one, have a break, then move on to the next one. Just because that way, I'll feel more satisfied knowing that I've moved all of them further along. One of the things that I find quite difficult psychologically about writing is knowing that while you're working on something, you're not working on something else. So this kind of remedies that in a way, because at least I've made progress with all of those songs. So that's what I'm going to do now. I have got my cup of tea and I have got my slippers on, so it's time to write. So several hours have passed and I'm pleased to report that I've worked on about 5 different songs in that time, and it's really worked. Taking the breaks was good. I made myself a cup of tea every single time, so a lot of tea has been consumed today, perhaps a little bit more than normal. But it was great because I actually walked away from what I was doing and I know that I can come back to that at any time, but also I've made a start on so many different things and it feels really good. I generally feel like this is something that I'm going to do long term now. It feels productive, and it feels like I've actually got more done than I would have done if I'd just sat there and worked on one song. So it just goes to show that it isn't really about waiting for that moment of inspiration. It is actually about just working on it in a logical way. It hasn't stopped me being creative, and ideas have still come to me. And it's really weird because I haven't had to force anything. And I think that's what I believed when I started writing. I believed that I would actually sit here and the ideas would just come to me and that something would work through me. But it doesn't really work like that. To me, it's actually more about sitting down and doing that. And if you are a creative person and you're watching this, pick up a pen, start writing. Pick up a paintbrush, do whatever it is you do. You don't have to finish the work, you just have to start it. That's the hardest bit. And don't get me wrong, those romantic moments are going to happen. Those ideas are going to spring on you. And you might be sat there in the early hours of the morning trying to come up with something. But in my experience, it doesn't happen every single time. Otherwise, I'd be a very tired person. The thing that's surprised me over the years is how ordinary those moments of inspiration really are. I remember once going to the fridge to get a yoghurt, and that inspired an idea for a song. More on that story later. But yes, anything can inspire you. And of course it's great to be influenced by these people from history and the way that they write. I'm literally only a moment away from a Mozart figure. But the reality is, outside of the pop culture and the history, Mozart probably had some pretty ordinary moments himself. And that's where I'm going to leave you this week, but thank you very much for watching. And if you take one thing away from this vlog, it's to go out and create something. I promise you, you'll get something good out of it.